Welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Aparna Vatve, Faculty of Tata Institute of Social Sciences. This module is about globalization and biodiversity conservation in India. It is part of the paper Environment and Society. In this module, we will try and understand what globalization means. We will look at how global concepts of biodiversity conservation are sometimes different from the local concepts. We will look at protected areas, protected species, and protection of traditional knowledge. In the end, we will try to address the question, what works better for conservation? Every day, our world is getting smaller. Our food comes from somewhere else. The dress that we wear is based on fashions in some other country. Our choices change with what the world is offering us. Our thinking and behavior also changes with exposure to the world. Communication, television, and today internet are constantly changing how we think and how we feel. Globalization is a process of interaction and integration among the people. It is also a process of integration among companies and governments of different nations. In the past, only products were traded between countries. Today, we also exchange policies and technology. It has been a natural process. People have always interacted with each other. They have always grown through different exposures. But today, process of globalization has become very different. It has large effects on our environment and culture. All aspects of Indian society are changing with the advent of globalization. Some are positive effects and some are negative effects. In the 1990s, industrialization grew very fast. There were different areas where industries came up at the cost of biodiversity. Biodiversity and ecosystems were not given a priority in some periods and they suffered a major loss. Around the same time, India became signatory to different global conventions. These conventions were proposing ways of conserving ecosystems and biodiversity. It had to frame conservation strategies as response to the global concerns of biodiversity. India is a megadiversity nation. It has a very large number of plant and animal species in a relatively small area. We also have very large population. Biodiversity of India is concentrated in some parts. We have what are called as endemic species. They are seen nowhere else but in India. When framing the conservation strategy, we had to look at all of these aspects. We had to think of the humans as well as the plants and animals in India. Conservation has been practiced on a small scale by many local communities. In the initial phases of framing policies or laws for biodiversity conservation, local practices of conservation were ignored. International ideas and international models were followed on a large scale. Only in the later stage, we realized that participation of local communities is a must. Changes have always happened in India right from the colonial times. During the British period, interests of the state were different from the interest of the people. People were managing their environment for their own subsistence. But when the colonial government had commercial interest, they looked at all of India as a major productive area. Forests were treated as commercial entities. Agriculture was promoted only when it was really productive. Sometimes the food crops were replaced by other kinds of cash crops. This created many problems and many conflicts between the government and the people. Colonial state only recognized rights of the landowner. User rights were neglected. In the past, kings had also had their own hunting areas. They had their pleasure gardens and parks where other people were not allowed to come. But on the whole, the kings did not assume total control over the resources. They understood and accepted that the local user rights and decision making was to be separate. The rule of the kings was not as centralized as in case of the colonial government. In the British period, land was categorized based on its use. Lands which were not productive for agriculture were all treated as wastelands. Forests were valued based upon the timber. Other forest produce such as bamboo were valued. But most of the forests were treated as inferior quality and therefore plantations had to be done in them as per the British rule. All other values of forests were neglected. People were using forests for subsistence. They had cultural values, religious values, all attached to the forest. But the commercial values were always put forward by the state government. They were clearly oriented to the market. There was also a difference between what one meant by conservation. Communities conserved area, but they did not mean complete protection. What they meant was regulated use and sustainable extraction of the natural resources. But the dominant conservation models, right from the colonial times, promoted the idea of complete protection, which meant that there was no place for extraction of resources by the local communities. Only two types of ownerships were understood very well: private ownership or government ownership. Many types of common ownerships that we had were neither understood nor accepted by the government. After our independence, the focus shifted, but the laws continued to be colonial. The focus slowly was on increasing industry. That took its toll on ecosystems. Later, when the world started talking about biodiversity conservation, India also had to frame very specific strategies for the same. It already had colonial acts and policies. They were centrally dictated and did not include people. The new objective of conservation was also promoted through the same laws, and the new laws were also colonial in mindset. People's involvement in framing the law or policy was negligible. It was the national and international agencies, scientists, policymakers, and managers who took a great part in framing the conservation policies. A majority of the global strategies for biodiversity conservation were proposed after the Rio Earth Summit in 1992. This was drawing attention towards many issues in conservation. Conservation of ecosystems was mainly being done through protection areas. Conservation of ecosystem was mainly through declaration of protected areas. There was also focus on conservation of endangered charismatic species like tiger and elephant. At the same time, the need for conservation of traditional knowledge was also accepted. Indian conservation strategies mainly follow the models of conservation developed in Europe and America. Protected areas of India are planned on the lines of national parks in America. This encouraged collaboration between scientists and policymakers in both the countries. There was funding support by international conservation organizations. Various United Nations agencies also helped in the whole process. United Nations Environment Programme provides funds and guidelines for various conservation activities even now. International Union for Conservation of Nature promotes work on endangered species and habitats. It constantly updates a list of species in danger. This is called the Red List. There is a website of the same name. On this website, you will find a list of all the species in India which are considered endangered with extinction. Conservation International, Nature Conservancy, Worldwide Fund for Nature are some other organizations which have influenced plans of conservation in India. The protected areas were based on conserving representatives of wild habitats of all the ecosystems in India. The network of protected area covers almost 5% of our total geographic area. Till date, there are 103 national parks declared. There are 537 wildlife sanctuaries. But don't be surprised by the number. There are some very small islands in Andamans, each is a separate sanctuary. There are 67 conservation reserves and 26 community reserves. These two categories are fairly recent. They include people in all stages of management. In addition to this, we have around 50 tiger reserves and 32 elephant reserves. There are special areas maintained for conservation of Indian rhinoceros and other endangered species. For these animals, there are special programs. Project Tiger and Project Elephant constantly create strategies for conservation of these two main species. UNESCO has designated 7 Natural World Heritage Sites. Every year, India proposes new natural heritage sites to UNESCO. 39 sites in the entire Western Ghats have been identified as World Natural Heritage Sites. We also have trans-boundary protected areas. Manas is managed by Bhutan and India. Sundarban, the large patch of mangrove forest, is managed by India and Bangladesh. We exchange strategies for conservation between two countries. Globalization of conservation has raised new issues and debates over management. One of the main or central debate was whether it is better to have complete protection or allow sustainable utilization. Despite various programs, the conflicts between these two views continued. This was mainly related to the basic declaration of protected areas. During the declaration process, people were often neglected or excluded. According to the survey in 1980s, 65% of protected areas of India were characterized by human settlements and natural resource use. Protection activities often infringed upon human rights of people living in that area. Relationship between Forest Department and people turned hostile in most places. Sasan Gir was declared a national park in 1975. This was the only habitat for the Asiatic lion. That forest was inhabited by pastoral communities who were settled there for several centuries. As a part of World Bank funded project, Forest Department of Gujarat forcibly displaced 845 families from the Gir National Park. This was mainly because of the pressure of international organizations. Wildlife Protection Act of 1972 was used to justify displacement, although this was never the purpose of this act. Displacement from protected area continues even today. The need to exclude people from protected area has been continuously debated. Ecological studies have shown that all human use is actually not detrimental to wildlife conservation interests. Present-day biodiversity reflects influence of past land use practices. Excluding humans can actually reduce biodiversity of some areas. In some areas, habitats have shown improvement following human use or habitation. This may not be the case true in case of all the areas. But we need to understand that such variations can exist. We cannot have the same strategy of protection for all areas or all habitats. In the early 1970s, the entire world became interested in tiger conservation. India had and still has the largest population of Royal Bengal tiger. Most of the tigers were eliminated at the time of the British. That was through hunting for sport. Later, as our population grew and forests became more and more degraded, tigers also reduced. Scientists and foresters pointed out the need for urgent protection of tiger populations. International organizations supported this with funds. Even the common people and children in developed countries collected money in the protection of tiger fund. They were never going to see the tiger, but they were very concerned that it existed on earth. Project Tiger was started as a separate entity. Many tiger reserves were identified in already existing protected areas. All management plans of these areas were made to protect the tiger. Tiger reserves were spread across different types of habitats. Tiger was seen to be an umbrella species. If one protected tiger, it already meant protection of these different habitats. In the initial phases, Project Tiger took a very cautious approach. It knew that there were communities which stayed inside the tiger reserves. The management plans used to consider all these factors. But after 1994, international agencies pushed for stricter protection. They even pushed for displacement of people outside the tiger reserves. There were bitter conflicts between social activists and conservation lobbies. In the end, it was the tiger which suffered the most. In many areas, there were revenge killings, poisoning of the tiger, and poaching of tiger grew. Local people were not in support of the tiger anymore. They were not actually against the tiger, but were against the government which was forcing them to give up their lands. Business models of conservation also came up in the developed countries. They believed that conservation should pay for itself. This same idea was then taken up in India. It led to opening up of many tiger reserves and other protected areas for tourism. Ecotourism is one of the biggest businesses that we have. Initially, ecotourism was thought to promote livelihoods and generate activities for and income for people living in and around tiger reserves. After many years, we have realized that it does not really support the local people in a very big way. It is the big investors, the resort owners, which get the most benefits. Local people end up using very small jobs in the entire ecotourism industry. In 2005, tigers vanished from Sariska Tiger Reserve and Panna Tiger Reserve. These beautiful tiger reserves had featured in many of the documentaries on wildlife. Losing tiger from them was like a shock to the entire nation. A special tiger task force was created in 2005 to look at the situation of tigers in India. It included environmentalists and social scientists. The report brought out many social issues. It showed how conflict has increased in all tiger reserves, and it recommended moving towards a more inclusive conservation model. It said that long-term conservation of tiger can be achieved only if we allow development of people in an eco-friendly manner. Another major issue has been protecting traditional knowledge. Knowledge of use of biodiversity is also a precious resource. Millions of people in India have been sharing and using plants, animals, and microbes. In the era of globalization, this knowledge is targeted because it can have huge commercial potential. There is exploitation by many foreign agencies. There are cases of biopiracy already known in India. Biopiracy refers to the use of intellectual property systems to legitimize the exclusive ownership. It is to gain control over biological resources, biological products, and processes that have been used over centuries in non-industrialized nations. India was surprised into action when patents were granted to American companies for use of neem and turmeric. Neem and turmeric have been in regular use of people in Asia for several centuries. I don't think there is even one single Indian home which does not have turmeric in its kitchen. Although India won the cases against the corporates, it was a wake-up call. Biopiracy posed a threat to several crop varieties, medicines, and other plant and animal products regularly in use in India. Biodiversity Act was created in 2002 to ensure protection against biopiracy. This act protects rights of local communities who have maintained the knowledge of biodiversity use. International agreement known as Nagoya Protocol lays down standards for access and benefit sharing about biodiversity resources. Convention on Biological Diversity, Agenda 21 are some of the international instruments that protect the rights of indigenous communities. Nagoya Protocol ensures sharing the benefits of biological resources in a fair and equitable manner. It contributes towards conservation and sustainable use of biodiversity. India is signatory to this, yet it has not been implemented fully. Inclusion of local communities is possible in laws and provision making. As per this protocol, inclusion of local communities is possible in decision making about traditional knowledge. But we don't really know if it will help the communities in future or will just be another way of central decision making. India has taken several important decisions and created laws and acts that conserve biodiversity and habitats of local communities. In practice, however, it is the international agencies which dictate the objectives of conservation through their collective force. Very often, the local communities are consulted only in the later stages and have very little voice in making decisions about their conservation. In spite of the well-documented history of community-based conservation, we are not really using these practices for future. There is a need to take a bottoms-up approach to conservation and help communities to define the objective of conservation. National and international agencies can play a supporting role in this. In this module, we have seen how conservation of biodiversity in India is often influenced by global ideas. Globalization has been supporting this process. At present, we have a mix of global, national, and local agendas for conservation. Very often, these agendas seem to work against each other. It is necessary that we try to combine and harmonize these three approaches if we want to preserve our unique biodiversity. I hope you have enjoyed listening to this module. You can take a look at our e-text for details. There are books, websites, and other links given in the essential reading section. Thank you very much for staying with us.